Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. And welcome to today's Enterprise Connect webinar, 5 Simple Steps to Migrate Your Communication Systems to the Cloud, brought to you by Enterprise Connect, BroadSoft, and UBM. I'm Eric Kraft, GM and Program Co-Chair for Enterprise Connect and publisher of No Jitter. And I'm your moderator today. We have just a few announcements before we begin. This webinar is designed to be interactive between you and our presenters, who you see there and we'll introduce in just a second. We'll ask for your feedback later in the presentation. You can participate in the Q&A session by asking questions at any time during the presentation. Just type your questions into the Ask a Question text area below the media player, then click the Submit button. We'll answer as many questions as time permits at the end of the presentation. Slides will advance automatically throughout the event. You may also download a copy of the slides by clicking on the Download Slide button located on the right of the console. At this time, we recommend you disable your pop-up blockers. If you're experiencing any technical problems, please visit our webinar help guide by clicking on the Help link below the video window. In addition, you can contact our technical support helpline, which is also located in the webinar help guide. If slides are not advancing, press your F5 key to refresh your console. Now on to the presentation, 5 simple steps to migrate your communication systems to the cloud. Discussing today's webinar will be Erwin Lazar, Vice President and Service Director at Nemertes Research, David Rosenthal, Senior Director of Product Marketing at BroadSoft Unified Communications, and Arnab Mishra, Vice President, BroadSoft Contact Center. For those of us who were at Enterprise Connect last week, we know that this topic of cloud has gotten really some serious traction here in the industry, and we've been talking about it now for a number of years. And obviously, BroadSoft has been one of the leaders in equipping this space to deliver cloud communications. But we're seeing much more than ever before that many enterprises are getting ready to make the move. We'll start with just a brief introduction of our speakers and the folks they work for. They'll give you a little more detailed look at our agenda. We'll look at what the trends are, what your benefits can be, and then we'll discuss these 5 steps that will help get to your success. And then at the end, we will look to do Q&A. So please do send in questions as you think of them. You don't have to wait for the end, and we'll be able to answer your questions at the close of the session. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Erwin Lazar of Nemertes Research to start off the presentations. Erwin?
Great. Thank you, Eric, and good to talk to all of you this afternoon or morning or evening, depending on where you are, as Eric mentioned. So I'm Erwin Lazar, Vice President Service Director with a company called Nemertes Research. We spend our time going out and talking to enterprise IT buyers, users, those who are responsible for deploying technology, and we try and gather information about what they are doing, why they're doing it, what technologies they're adopting, what they're spending, and so on. So my role in this webinar is to share some information with you around what we have seen with respect to cloud communications and best practices for successfully migrating to cloud. David, would you like to step in?
Sure. So who is BroadSoft? BroadSoft's a platform behind the hosted unified communications products at Verizon, Comcast, AT&T, CenturyLink, Vonage, and about 400 other service providers. We've been making the world safe for unified communications since 2001 when we released our first hosted VoIP product. Today we've got 16 million lines of business voice and unified communications in commercial service, and those 16 million users are 100% cloud. So just like Matthew McConaughey has been driving a Lincoln since well before he was paid to do so, we've been deploying cloud UC since well before it was the it thing. So in terms of what BroadSoft makes, our product portfolio has grown considerably since our initial release in 2001. Today we deliver 3 primary applications: UC1, which is a unified communications product for communications mobilization; Team1, which is a team collaboration product for collaboration empowerment, and CC1, which is a contact center product for customer engagement. And those three products are linked together and with the outside world with BroadSoft Hub. What BroadSoft Hub does beyond connecting our three applications is really to provide an interface point between BroadSoft Business and a whole host of other cloud enterprise applications like G Suite and Office 365 and Salesforce.com. So if you really think about it, right, a business today needs only three communications applications from BroadSoft, and then whatever other enterprise applications are driving the business process for each individual enterprise. So back to you, Erwin.
Excellent. So as we start down this journey of implementing cloud communications and making that successful migration to cloud communications, I wanted to take a minute and kind of level set. What do we mean when we say cloud communications? So we put together a definition. This is based on one that's linked to from Data Migration Pro. I kind of tweaked it a little bit. But what we're really saying is that the back-end communications applications, the IP PBX, the video bridge, the collaboration software for web conferencing and team messaging and others are all being shifted into a service model where we're not running these applications in our own data center, but instead we're buying what we need from a service provider typically on a subscription basis. So as we think about what that means and some of the characteristics of success, we have to address migration from existing platforms to the new platform. We have to address things like management. We have to address making sure that we've got high-quality network connections, resiliency, and so on. So we'll spend a fair amount of time going into those in a little bit more detail. And as Eric mentioned earlier in the introduction, cloud is if not king, it's certainly at the prince level and working its way up. For those of you who happened to attend Enterprise Connect last week, there was an awful lot of discussion of cloud, and most of the major featured providers were delivering cloud-based communications platforms and emerging cloud-based services, and many of those powered by BroadSoft. I put together a chart just showing the overall market trend, and we're looking at three different areas. One is IP telephony in the blue line. The second is video conferencing in the red line, and the third is contact center. And this is from a variety of data sources that we've used over the last couple of years. Most recent data came from about 700 companies that we both interviewed a percentage of them as well as surveyed a larger percentage. And so you can kind of see they're all moving up and to the right. And really the big jump we've seen in cloud communications in the last, I'd say, year to 18 months is it's no longer just the SMB. It's no longer the 50-person shop that wants telephony and contact center services as quickly as possible, doesn't have any IT staff, and wants to go out and buy something. Now you're seeing cloud going into the larger enterprises, the multi-thousand employee organizations, and we'll talk a little bit more about why that is in a second. We've got some preliminary data for 2017 showing we're up to about 46% cloud adoption now for IP telephony and 80% for video. So you can continue to see a very strong upward trend. And we've seen organizations moving in a pretty similar mode around cloud. David, did you bring you in to talk a little bit more about some of the cloud momentum that you're seeing as well?
Great, thanks. So, when we were talking about this, we were trying to, it's pretty clear from our discussions, from the general conversations of Enterprise Connect and general trends in communications that cloud is happening, and it's happening broadly all over the world for enterprise communication migration. So the question is really, right, why migrate to the cloud now?
And really, I think the key, do we skip one? Oh,
yeah, I got
David,
it.
You want to take the,
so,
yeah, you got this slide, and I'll get the next one, sorry.
Yeah. So the communications innovation cycle is really in overdrive right now, and that's really sort of caused by the innovation cycle at at Google with new Android phones, and at Apple with new iOS devices. And the products are being delivered both in terms of new handsets and new upgrades at such a rapid pace that everybody that uses mobile phones now is sort of used to this expectation of new functionality that gets introduced on a device every year, and in terms of new software on a daily or monthly basis. Premise-based communications, even one that's built on modern hardware, can't keep pace. And even if the vendor community could keep pace, there's no way people that have historically operated enterprise-based PBXs are going to be able to keep pace with that. So when migrating to the cloud now will allow you to provide the much-needed mobile enablement and cloud-delivered functionality. So as a sort of enterprise owner of communications, you're able to give your users the tools that they need to conduct their business and the sort of rapid innovation that they're used to in sort of the consumer life cycle. So by migrating to a cloud UC platform today, you'll get automatic upgrades, and you'll get a continued innovation cycle with updates that don't require physical upgrades. You're going to reduce the requirement for on-site administration and allow you to administer your cloud services centrally. And as a matter of fact, our view on this is that administration of unified communication can be so simple that business managers, not IT professionals, can take part in that activation. So our vision here is that the activation of unified communications can be done by HR or standard office admins and not necessarily require IT intervention. So generally, the idea is that we want the IT staff to focus on important tasks like playing words with friends, or more specifically, working on a long-term strategy so that users have the same rapid access to communication improvements that they do on their personal devices.
So David, I think and I think you really hit the nail on the head when you talk about the impact of IT staff and the need to get out of that long upgrade cycle. What we have seen in our research over the last 2 years is a big emphasis within IT shops around digital transformation and aligning IT more quickly, more effectively with the lines of business, with business processes, taking advantage of emerging technology. You mentioned Android and iOS advances and cloud software application advances that happen multiple times a day, multiple times a week. And when you're in a life cycle where it's a 3-year changeover for your next communication platform, or when a vendor releases a software upgrade and you've got to wait months to get that installed and updated, it's really not aligning the communications environment with the overall business need. And so what we have seen is that, showing on this chart here, that what's the biggest driver for cloud communications, we find the cost savings is down to about 30% of people that say, that's the reason I went to cloud. I really just wanted to save money. Instead, it's speed to deploy, the ability to be more agile, the ability to quickly make changes and adapt to the changing culture of the organization. Some other factors like mandate that said, we just don't want to have infrastructure on-prem, or we want to reassign our IT staff so that they're focusing on more strategic roles that actually deliver value to the business. And so as we see on the next chart, from a study that we've done on overall unified communications and collaboration total cost of ownership for the last couple of years, we've seen a big trend in companies that go to cloud in what their staff is doing. We've actually seen slight increase in staff, at least in the first year, for those that go to cloud because of the need to make that transition, to develop new processes, to figure out how to put people in roles where they're working with cloud providers and ensuring alignment with them. But you can see a pretty strong drop in break fix. So people aren't spending as much time troubleshooting problems, updating servers, patching servers, doing the kinds of operational tasks that have come to define enterprise communications for so many years. Instead, they're now shifting to working with lines of business to help with adoption of tools and driving up usage rates for, say, things like desktop video conferencing and Team One style team messaging and others. They're working with a line of business to align what the needs are of the business. What do people need from their communications and collaboration environment? How do they support things like telework, field workers, process workers, and so on, and make that jump in communications beyond just the traditional set of desktop applications to one where communications is now potentially embedded into the rest of business applications. And slightly increase you'll see there in partner management as well. So working with those cloud providers and helping to make sure that they're adopting in a manner that works for business and that they can have insight and visibility into the solutions that they're deploying. So when we talk about steps for success, what we have seen in our research and our consulting activities with our larger enterprise clients is it still requires a fairly structured process to go through to ensure success of a cloud migration. And we'll go through each of these in a little bit more detail, but we'll start with assessing the environment, picking the right solution, figuring out how best to migrate, figuring out the right partner to migrate with, and then creating a blueprint for long-term ongoing change. So Arne and David, why don't you take the next slide and we can talk about assessment.
Super. So when we first talk about assessment, right, the first thing that we talk about is taking inventory. And the funny thing about taking inventory is that a lot of times you, as sort of an enterprise owner or manager, will have a lot of stuff that you didn't even realize. We did a migration recently at the University of Virginia where we were migrating an entire campus off of a Siemens PBX. And as we went through the process of exploring all of the handsets that they had out there and phone numbers and trunks and platforms and remotes, they had over 1,000 handsets that were out in the network connected that they had no visibility into in terms of, who was attached to the other end, what the phone number was, what phone calls were being made. So the first step here is to take a thorough inventory of all your stuff that you have today, and you probably want to take that inventory through a variety of different routines, right? You don't necessarily want to trust the spreadsheet that was printed out and put in the telco administrator's second drawer since the mid-'80s, right? You want to look at the systems. You want to take a look around and look at all of the buildings maybe that you have equipment in. You want to look at your service bills so that you really are comfortable that you have a good view into what you have today. Next, you sort of want to understand your future, right? And your future isn't tomorrow. Your future is maybe the next 36 months. So you really want to understand what your growth patterns are. You want to understand what your leases look like, right? Are you going to be in the same facilities tomorrow as you are today, right? So you want to look at both also inorganic growth, right? Are you considering acquisitions, right? Where are those potential facilities located? What kind of technology do you think they have? Next, we have to think about what the user needs, right, and what the user wants and what we have the ability to deliver. So you want to understand their functional requirements, their mobility requirements, their device requirements. And lastly, you want to understand your timeline, right? So any project is going to be limited by skills, dates, and money, right? And you want to understand all three of these things as you assess the migration of your company so that there are no surprises.
Right, and from a contact center perspective, I think you will echo a lot of the similar sentiments. The first thing we ask our customer to do is really to take a step back and take a holistic view of their contact center operations. And really the focus here is, if you think about contact centers, they're mission-critical parts of any business. They're touching customers every day, and so continuity of service and ensuring uptime is the number one job when you think about migrating from a premise solution to a cloud solution. So with that in mind, the first thing we typically ask our customers is look at the communication channels that are being used today, the ones that are being most prevalently used by customers in terms of reaching the contact center. We live in an omni-channel world today, so typically most contact centers are handling interactions over chat, email, voice, SMS, social, so the list grows year after year. Voice may be a predominant channel, but these other channels have to be considered and their impact on customer interactions. The next thing we do is we think about, well, how do we segment this migration, because you're not going to move the entire contact center day one, and what's the best way to prioritize the overall migration? And that really depends on the contact center, on the business that it supports. We've looked at this from migrating specific sites, one site at a time. We've looked at it by migrating different agent groups and agent teams, one team at a time. We've even done it by looking at business units or product lines and thinking about the migration, segmenting it in those ways. And so once that strategy gets put in place, you can start building timelines around how best to do this, what makes the most sense given the cadence of the business, seasonal ups and downs, and when the right time is to do it. We then, as a next step, look at the different systems that need to be integrated, need to be preserved. Because just because you're moving to a cloud contact center doesn't mean you're moving your other applications to the cloud concurrently. And so we take great pains in making sure we preserve those investments through integrations to those applications so that they continue to function as part of the overall contact center environment. The work that we do in overlaying our system for routing, overlaying our system for analytics is key there. And then while we're doing all this work, we obviously look to figure out, are there ways that we can improve the contact center environment while this migration is happening? So we do a gaps assessment. We look at those gaps and see if there are ways we can fill those gaps as we're migrating. And typically those gaps are focused around improving specific KPIs that the contact center cares about. For sales contact centers, it tends to be around conversion rates and order values. For service contact centers, it tends to be around retention rates if they're dealing with customer renewals and activities like that. And for support contact centers, it typically is first contact resolution.
So, thanks, Arnav. As we sit down and we theorize about what the best ways to migrate enterprises to the cloud, we think about and we talk about a bunch of different strategies, right? One strategy that comes up all the time is the concept of mapping features to personas. And we think that this is one of the secrets to a successful migration. We do this so that a company that has 10,000 people does not have to sort of solicit the requirements of 10,000 individual end users in order to figure out how to provision service on the target platform. What we really want to do is we want to boil the user types down into a couple of key personas so that they can be created in an organized manner. This will allow us, right, the enterprise and the cloud provider, to enable provision and to communicate the new functionality that's being provided to users. We really want to focus on new functional enablement and not get bogged down into mapping old telephony features. So, for example, we want to focus on how to link telephones into a mobile environment instead of trying to figure out how to get a legacy phone service like Park and Page in a common area. And that's not to say that we don't support Park and Page. Of course, a company with our background in hosted PBX is going to support a litany of typical and standard legacy PBX features. But just because that's how you sort of run phone-based business processes in the past doesn't mean that decision holds true today, right? So we often in a migration project want to think about what's the business objective here and not necessarily what do you do today to achieve that business objective, because we always want to see if we can do something better. So I'm not sure if you know this, but back in the day, Baskin-Robbins used to serve a licorice-flavored ice cream. And licorice-flavored ice cream would never sell today, but through the sort of evolution of the ice cream business, right, Baskin-Robbins had to say to a couple licorice ice cream aficionados that today and going forward, you cannot have licorice ice cream. However, you're going to get chocolate chip and 31 other varieties of wonderful ice cream. And we sort of look at cloud unified communications the same way, right? We really want to focus with our enterprise partners about all the new things that you can do with mobile, with context, with integration into other applications, instead of really focus on telephony features that were built 25 years ago to solve a particular problem back then that have just been pushed forwards and don't really solve or aren't the best way to solve these problems in today's market. So, persona mapping isn't as much of a science as it is a way and a practice of understanding the type of business that you're operating. So we've sort of created or mapped some here that I'd like to review with you. These are by no means exhaustive, but these are typical personas that we see in an enterprise and ones that we use as part of a standard migration. So we sort of look at and group these by telephone number, because very often that's how PBXs are organized. So we're going to start with the front office stations. So these are either auto attendants or receptionists. They're basically the method by which the business opens or answers their main published numbers. And we start here because this is how the business interacts with the public. The next personas that we map are the boss admin or executive admin set of telephony features. Now, these are important because they are a critical communication path in the enterprise, and they're generally very high consumers of phone services. Next, we look at shared lines. So shared lines are, for example, hot desking, right, where you've got a bank of phones where visiting employees from other offices can sit. And then we have to take into consideration power users. These are typically users that will have a soft client, a high-performance desk phone, and a mobile client. And the last sort of persona of typical unified communication consumers that we see are mobile workers. So these can either be road warriors or just people who work in home offices. Contact centers sort of follow the same strategy but have a different set of personas. You have agents that really care about kind of desktop integration and integration with the other applications that they use to service their customer base. So this is typically CRM or another vertically specific application. You've got supervisors who care about the performance of their agents, they care about scheduling, and they care about KPIs, the key performance indicators of those agents. And then you have administrators who care about the provisioning of those agents and supervisors and the life cycle management of those users. And lastly, we need to think about not just the internal users of the communication service, but we also need to consider the customers that we interact with and potentially partners that, although not part of the enterprise, need to interact with virtual meeting spaces and that sort of thing. So really, to summarize, we need to sort of understand our business from a internal, customer, and external basis and take those functional requirements, map them into personas, because that will allow you to provision and activate your UC and contact center services easy, will expedite your operationalization of the UC and contact center services, and make training and uptake much easier. So back to you, Erwin.
Great. And just to echo what you said, in our research, we do a lot of correlation of success factors for successful implementations, and we found that organizations that go through that work of defining personas and making sure they're mapping capabilities to those personas tend to see higher utilization rates, tend to have a higher self-rated success, get higher budgets for communication collaboration. So they definitely have a more positive alignment with the business. So as we think about taking that work of figuring out what it is you specifically need across contact center and communications and then picking the right solution, that it requires you to do a fair amount of homework on the different solutions that are out there. So typically we're looking at the way the market is structured now. You kind of see three buckets. There are companies that offer just hosted unified communication collaboration solution. There are some that do just contact center. And then there are increasingly ones that try and pull it all together to enable you to do things like some of what Arnav mentioned in terms of allowing collaboration across contact centers, allowing easy collaboration between frontline contact center agents and perhaps higher level support personnel or people within other groups. So what you really want to pay attention to as you're looking at the different solutions out there are geographic availability. Do they cover the areas that you need? Do they cover the kinds of services and features that map to the personas? What are the means that they offer for network access, which we'll talk about a little bit more detail in a little bit? And then how do they enable integration between contact center and unified communications, as well as enable integration with the rest of your business application portfolio, so sales and ERP and other CRM applications, marketing applications, and so on, so that you can potentially include communications directly within those applications and extend the communications environment to allow you, say, to make a phone call from within a sales management application. David, we'll turn back to you.
And so looking at this from a BroadSoft perspective, so as Erwin mentioned, there are vendors out there that provide unified communications, others that provide contact center. BroadSoft is, I think, leading the way in providing a combined set of capabilities that bring unified communications and contact center together in a single solution. From a unified communications perspective, we provide a full suite of hosted PBX that supports single number, IM and presence, HD voice and video, and screen sharing on any device. And through our hub capabilities, we also provide contextual intelligence that really enables end-user productivity, whether it's one-to-one communications or one-to-many communications. This unified communications capability is tightly integrated with our contact center, which provides all the capabilities you need to run a modern omni-channel contact center. We have unique differentiation around analytics and how we use those analytics, both from a descriptive analytics perspective, but also from a predictive analytics perspective. And our product has really been built as a platform that integrates well with a variety of other applications, the other applications that the contact center needs to operate effectively. And we do this all from the cloud, so you scale up and down as you need for seasonal peaks, as contact centers grow, as they need to cut back. And so this ability to pull both of these capabilities together, the key value is that it really breaks down the wall that has traditionally existed between the contact center and the rest of the business, where now contact center agents and folks in other parts of the business can seamlessly collaborate, communicate to the benefit of the business and to the benefit of the end customer.
Great. So that was a great description of the functionality of our integrated unified communications and contact center service. But as you well know, it doesn't matter how great the cloud service is, it has to get to you. So we're going to spend a couple minutes now talking about the network options. So there's a variety of network options out there to provide access to these cloud services. And we're not going to be very prescriptive about who to partner with on a network perspective. We're going to talk more about the topologies and the architectures that you can leverage along with the pros and the cons. So essentially, there's kind of 3.5 different methods for gaining access to a cloud service. You've got private networks, which are in the process of going away right now, right? You don't see a lot of private networks, but you do see them being replaced with MPLS networks. So that's currently what we see as sort of the default managed wide area network architecture for the multi-site environment. And we think those WAN services are great, and the majority of our networking partner that serve the mid-market and large enterprise focus specifically on MPLS as the technology to connect to all the enterprise sites, right? It provides a performance guarantee. It provides a guaranteed protection against denial of service and other types of cyber attacks. So it's generally the most expensive and the highest quality from a data throughput perspective. And then we have on the other side over-the-top access or unified communications and contact center via the public internet. So, I mean, we see this as significantly less expensive than MPLS access, but there's also and availability is very easy. There's nearly nowhere in North America essentially that you could have an office that doesn't have at least one or two options for high-speed internet. But it certainly does have some performance guarantee problems. So, regardless of whether you want to select, a private MPLS circuit with guaranteed availability and performance, or a public internet option, the most important thing is to understand what your requirements are and understand what the typical SLA that you'll get from these different network partners. So internet is definitely not all created equal, and we just want to encourage you to look around at as many different partners as you need to before selecting the best partner. The last thing I want to mention here is a new technology that we're seeing a variety of our partners adopt, which is SD-WAN. So SD-WAN stands for Software Defined Wide Area Network, and it's generally used for enterprises that have some amount of MPLS, but also have sites that they can only access via public internet and direct internet access. So it's a combination of a piece of CPE and a sort of a cloud gateway that allows you to sort of treat off-net internet locations as part of your managed wide area network. So we've got several partners there, and that's really the half option that I mentioned in terms of the 3.5 methods for internet access. So again, to refresh, you've got private network options, MPLS, internet, public internet, and SD-WAN if you sort of want to mix all that stuff together. Next, we're going to talk about migration tools. So just like all people have come from somewhere, right? When you're migrating to cloud, you're obviously migrating from something. So as we sort of plan out a migration, right, you're definitely going to want to confirm that whoever's providing the unified communications and contact center provides a set of tools that allow you to assess your current network, to pull users from existing platforms, to organize your data, and to implement that data into your preferred cloud platform. Additionally, telephones, right, voice over IP SIP phones, are going to need to be acquired, provisioned, and linked to your cloud UC accounts. So it's really important to have a comprehensive device management solution that allows you to control the life cycle of each phone without turning your IT group into a logistics shop. Contact center migration requirements focus on access to information. Agent desktops require access to enterprise applications like CRM. Additionally, even though the ACD might be moving to the cloud, historical data from legacy call center queues is still required for look-back analysis and KPI. So cloud ACD analytics need to be able to blend historical or even still active on-premise ACDs for a clear cross-enterprise analytical view. And lastly, even legacy ACDs have leveraged APIs for using public or cloud data to update routing rules. This information needs to be imported into the new cloud app at cut point and needs to be leveraged for go-forward updates to routing rules.
And so just to kind of build on those comments, from a end user perspective, as the system migrates from premise to cloud, the key thing about managing that migration is making sure that end users, business-focused users, operational users have the tools that they need in order to manage the environment when it's moved into the cloud. And so from that perspective, we think about the world in terms of managing the interaction flows, particularly within the contact center. So are there tools available that easily allow an end user who doesn't need to understand the innards of the underlying technology to design the interaction flows that they need to manage interactions coming in from the outside world and ones that need to be delivered to agents? How do you manage those queues? How do you set up the segmentation of the types of interactions that you'll see? And the second thing that's important, as David mentioned, is analytics. So obviously the contact center or the business has been running prior to the migration, and you want to ensure that you continue to have visibility after the migration. And in order to provide that bridge from the premise world to the cloud world, it requires a set of analytics and tools where you can pull data from existing systems, and likely from a variety of existing systems, aggregate that data up and provide that for historical analysis, but then also provide real-time dashboards and real-time visualizations so that you can manage the existing intraday operations and make sure that the cutover and the migration is progressing as designed.
Great. So moving on to the next step in the process of securing a trusted partner, we've developed a 5S approach at Nemertes that we like to use with our clients. And the first is looking at the size of the partner. As I mentioned earlier, are they big enough to meet my needs? If I'm a global multinational organization with different languages that I need to have supported, can they provide support capabilities regardless of where I need it? Do they have the scope to develop the kinds of solutions? So if I've got broad, complex solutions versus if I've got less complex solutions, can they meet those needs as well? What kind of security operation do they have? What kind of security certifications can they support, say, special needs of financials or those carrying potentially credit card information, health information, anything where you might be operating in a more regulated environment? The service, are they able to provide the kinds of services I need above and beyond, say, simple installation, break-fix support, but can they come in and help me with mapping and leveraging some of the APIs that were talked about earlier to improve internal workflows and processes? Can they support my digital transformation initiatives? And can they grow as I grow and continue to not only give me what I need, but maybe even suggest some things that I'd like to, I'm not thinking about, and become a trusted advisor. And finally, on the support side, can they provide the kind of support and the level of support I need in every location? Maybe it's not just installation and break fix, but maybe I need help with training. Maybe I need help with integration with existing systems, on-prem video conferencing platforms, other applications that I have in my organization. So conducting that broad search and looking at the kinds of different functionality that a provider and a partner can give you to help you grow, to help you take advantage of all the opportunities that are afforded by the cloud solution, not just in the short term, but also in the long term. We'll talk about a blueprint next, David.
Yep. So having a blueprint for a deployment is going to be really important. You'll need to have a series of project plans. So generally, what we're going to recommend is that you have a very granular per site project plan, and then also sort of a global strategic plan that looks at all of your different sites and orchestrating those together in a consistent service plan. You'll also need to figure out a framework for managing these projects. We have a lot of customers that use RACI matrices for a framework for project management. That's not an absolute requirement, but it seems that that's a popular option. And lastly, and I think most importantly, is you always want to lean towards standardization, right? As many of the activities, provisioning types, phone types, service types, service packs, there are all these options that you're going to be tasked with deciding over the process of your migration. And it seems like a really good idea to have a committee to make a separate decision for each one of these different paths in the journey. So we really want to encourage you to try and standardize as much as possible. You can always revisit these decisions and decide to go another direction in terms of a unique configuration. But our experience with this has been that if you can focus on standardization as much as possible, you're going to have a much more successful project. Next, we're going to talk about architecture types. And when we talk about architecture types, this is really in consideration of a multi-site environment and does unified communications, cloud-based, go connected to every site, and what's the timeline, et cetera. So there's a variety of different paths here, and we've done Nemerges has done some studying here, and I think what we do see is that obviously the most popular option, but not a huge majority, is to implement cloud company-wide. And we do think that company-wide doesn't happen at one time. So generally, our suggestion is if you have sites that have relatively modern PBXs, you want to sort of do those last, right? And you want to focus on the sites that either have failing equipment or that you're not serving well enough today, which is generally going to be small branch offices, mobile workers, and work from home. The one thing that we definitely want to encourage you is not to split solutions, right? You definitely don't want to select multiple UC cloud partners and use them sort of in different places around the country, and you definitely don't want to decide to only roll out cloud UC to a couple of offices. The last data point here that I want to talk about is in terms of interconnecting to existing PBXs. So BroadSoft has had a SIP trunking product in market since 2008, and to date we have over 35 million phone numbers that are routed to PBXs globally using carrier-based BroadSoft SIP trunking. So we want to let you know that if you're worried about maintaining your newer PBXs, we're not obligating you to swap those out in lieu of Cloud UC immediately. You can definitely blend this in over time so that you can focus on your high-risk areas, which are older equipment and branch offices that don't have UC services. Talk a little bit about our migration process. So we look at migration like any other data application that you'd see in your IT space. We want to focus on exporting from a variety of platforms. So we've got routines for exporting data out of Cisco Call Manager and Avaya IP Office and other PBXs. We want to then transform the data into different user types that I mentioned earlier today when we were talking about personas. And then lastly, we want to load and cut effectively jointly using our professional services staff to help you move your large sites. In terms of a superior delivery service, right, we're going to start with a readiness assessment. Step 2 is all about paperwork. Step 3 is to make sure that all of the equipment is acquired, provisioned, and shipped. Steps 4 and 5 are really about making sure that you're organized with your cloud provider and that you're confirming all of the activities that deal with delivery, activation, and cutover. Lastly, in slides 6 and 7, we're going to perform the cutover and make sure that all of the services are active. Now, the most important thing we consider in a cut is to make sure that we continue to service the users after the cut point. Right at that point, training and sort of first 30-day assistance is critical for the adoption of these new cloud services. So we think that day 1 through day 30 training and activation assistance is really critical to a successful migration. Erwin?
Great. So I think in summary, we've kind of laid out the case for cloud. We've talked about agility. We've talked about the challenges and the opportunities that are afforded by cloud. And we've talked about a number of the different areas that you need to address, from analytics to migration strategy to picking the right partner to mapping personas to the different solutions that are out there and ensuring service delivery. So really, I think that the key takeaway from our perspective is that the time is now to move to cloud. We see this in our research. As I mentioned, you saw the chart earlier showing the drastic uptick in adoption of cloud, and we're seeing it now in organizations of all sizes. It's getting harder and harder to defend the position of no, cloud is not right for me. I think migration opportunities continue to improve. We've talked about some of the ways that you can ease the migration challenge through partners, through different solution providers, and so on. We find, and something that we continue to look at in our research, is the integration and continuing integration of cloud contact center and cloud communications to enable the ability to share a common set of collaboration features, a common set of control, reduce management complexity, reduce configuration complexity as well on. We talked quite a bit about some of the tools that are out there, and we just went through service delivery approaches. We talked about analytics earlier. So there's a large and growing framework of capabilities to ease that transition, to ensure that you meet service levels, and to deliver business value, to take advantage of new features and new capabilities that allow you to meet digital transformation goals and so on. Ultimately, though, I came from a military background. And we always say no plan survives first contact with the enemy, but planning is everything. You have to have a plan. You have to have a plan that also provides flexibility that can allow you to adjust based on changing conditions, whether that's market conditions, business conditions, and so on. So wrap up with some next steps.
Great. Yep, so before we jump into Q&A, I just want to encourage everybody to reach out to us by emailing enterprise@broadsoft.com, and we'll set up a live demo and a follow-up call with some of our experts. And with that, let's get some questions.
Okay, thanks very much, David and Erwin and Arnab. And we are going to push out a little quick survey just to ask everybody to, this should open up, and we'll ask you to help us make these sessions better, a little quick evaluation. I want to start actually by something you guys said that resonated with me. We do at Enterprise Connect every year a focus group on Tuesday night with a bunch of the end user attendees. We get about 20 of them together just to talk about where they're at with stuff and what they think of the show and what we should do and not do and all that. And this whole issue of agility came up for the cloud. And it had come up in the past, and it was something we heard about a lot, but it seemed like we heard about it in a kind of a strategic sense of, or maybe you'd call it a tactical sense of, we need to have the agility to if the enterprise has one big application that it's decided to roll out, or one initiative that suddenly comes up and they say we got to do this and complete it in 30 days or 60 days or whatever, and you've got to be able to support it however we require it out of UC. But what folks were telling us this past show was that its agility had more to do with the sort of the baseline expectation that people have nowadays is just that when they say, can we get a new feature, you're not going to say, yeah, we'll have that in 12 to 18 months. That you've just got to be in this mode of always being able to roll out new features and just kind of a sort of continual update. Are you guys seeing the same thing, and is that an element of what you're seeing in cloud uptake?
Yeah, and I can jump in on that one, Eric. Just add in real quick. We've seen strong change in enterprise IT shifting to more of an agile mode. They're trying to get out of waterfall. They're trying to get to the point where, we talk about digital transformation. We talk about the rapid change in technology at a rate that's increasing. So it's not a gradual change over time, but it's an increasing rate of change over time. And as organizations see so many different competitors come in and disrupt the market. People always talk about Uber and Amazon and Netflix and others. Enterprises are much more keenly aware that they have to think about technology as an enabler and technology as a differentiator. And if their communications environment cannot support the rapid rate of change they're implementing throughout the rest of their application development organization, then it becomes a hindrance. So when you think about where that agility discussion normally fits is that, kind of like what you said, Eric, you don't want to be in that scenario where when somebody comes in and says, we want to mobile optimize our sales teams, we want to add a new IoT capability and have our dishwasher communicate back with our service house to let us know when there's a problem and allow us to go in and reconfigure or deliver smart meters or any one of a number of different digital transformation initiatives that are out there. IT has to rapidly deliver an advanced level of communication speed. And in order to do that, typically the only viable solution is to go to the cloud.
One thing I would add there, I think everything Erwin said we see as well, the flip side of that is from a cloud vendor perspective, that means being able to rapidly push out capabilities, but doing it in such a way that it's seamless for the customer. And that really speaks to the fact that you've got to architect your software and your application to be cloud ready. There's a number of different choices from an architecture perspective. There's probably a whole webinar on that by itself. But vendors who are truly in the cloud know how to continually upgrade their system without impacting the service or impacting customers. And that's, I think, a critical selection criteria when enterprises are looking at which cloud vendor should I choose.
All right, and we do have a few other questions, but we're just about out of time. We do have your questions here. We'll get a report on them, and our presenters, the folks at BroadSoft, will be able to reach out to you and interact with you and engage in some dialogue to make sure that your questions are answered. So with that, I'm going to push out the last slide, which is a resource for you all to get some more information from BroadSoft, and again, we'll be able to follow up with you on some details. Want to remind everyone that today's webinar was 5 simple steps to migrate your communication systems to the cloud. It was brought to you by Enterprise Connect, BroadSoft, and UBM. Shortly after this event, we'll send you an email reminder to access the presentation on demand and encourage you to pass that along as well to anybody who may not have seen about the webinar before, but you think might benefit from what we've heard today. This webinar is copyright 2017 by UBM. The presentation materials are owned by or copyrighted, if that is the case, by Enterprise Connect and BroadSoft, who are solely responsible for its content, and the individual speakers are solely responsible for their content and their opinions. On behalf of our guests, Erwin Lazar, Vice President and Service Director at Nemertes Research, David Rosenthal, Senior Director of Product Marketing at BroadSoft Unified Communications, and Arnab Mishra, Vice President, BroadSoft Contact Center, thanks for your time and have a great day.